Welcome to the WARSURGE quick guide video for the advanced playstyle. I'm Nicholas.
And I'm Richard. Advanced is a skirmish focused way to play WARSURGE. Let's get started with a competitive game using Deathmatch, lasting 4 game turns.
In this guide, it is assumed that you know the basics of a standard game of WARSURGE, how to deploy, move, attack, and how the dash phase works. We will be using the actions of these phases to play an advanced game. It is also assumed that you understand cover and that units must obey coherency.
To play an advanced game, you design your units, weapons, and a roster with the WARSURGE app as normal. Make sure you and your opponents have approximately the same points to spend, which we call the point limit. For example, you each make a roster that is worth 300 points. As with standard, make sure that each unit in the roster is worth at least 50 points.
Playing area, the battlefield. Set up a battlefield to play on. We recommend a flat, rectangular, or square surface, but you can use anything and almost any size. Place some scenery on the battlefield, divide the board to suit the number of players, with a neutral no man's land in the middle. For example, divide the board into 3 areas for 2-player games. Player areas are called deployment zones.
First game turn. Now we start the game with the first game turn. Each player rolls a dice, which we call a roll-off. The highest scoring player chooses the turn master. The turn master will go first, who chooses which deployment zone to take. The next highest score from the roll-off chooses the next deployment zone, until everyone has a deployment zone.
Only for the first game turn in an advanced game, players will alternate deploying units into deployment zones. Start with the turn master and go clockwise around the battlefield. Each player places a unit onto the battlefield inside the deployment zone that they chose. Players continue placing one unit at a time until all players are done, or until there are no units left to place. After this, and for future game turns, players must instead use the deploy action to deploy a unit, which we will discuss in more detail shortly.
Command points. Next, we generate a resource called command points, or CP for short. CP is needed for units to make actions during the advanced game turn. For each unit on the battlefield, including those that are inside transports, the player gains 2 CP. For example, a player that has 5 units on the battlefield will have 10 CP. Do not count units that are in reserve, which are waiting to be deployed.
The turn master now rolls a number of D6, which will grant bonus CP for all players. The number of dice rolled by the turn master each game turn depends on the point limit of the game. Roll a D6 for each 500 points of the game's point limit. For example, roll a single D6 if the game is 500 points or less. Roll 2 D6 if the game is 501 to 1000 points. Roll 3 D6 if the game is 1001 to 1500 points, and so forth.
For example, in an 800 points game, the turn master will roll 2 D6 and add the result together. Players add this result to the CP they already have from their units. The turn master rolls 2 D6 and gets a result of 7. A player with 5 units on the table already has 10 CP, but the turn master's roll adds 7, making it a total of 17 CP. We recommend that you keep track of your CP with markers or tokens, and place spent CP with the units that spent them.
Begin actions. Next, players will alternate making actions starting with the turn master, going clockwise around the battlefield, referring to deployment zones as a reference. In an advanced game, players can start with any unit and may use the same unit as many times as they wish over the course of the game turn. When they select a unit, the player can make 1 or 2 actions before the next player may select a unit and make 1 or 2 actions themselves.
Actions. We shall now explain actions. Move. The unit may make a move just like the move phase in a standard game. This action costs 1 CP.
Dash. The unit may make a dash just like the dash phase in a standard game. This action costs 1 CP.
Attack. The unit may attack with all of its available weapons, just like in the attack phase of a standard game. In advanced games, casualties apply immediately after the unit finishes using its weapons. This costs 1 CP. When players attack enemy units, they may get a chance to perform a counteraction, which we shall explain shortly.
Deploy. The unit may be placed onto the battlefield, like in the deploy phase. This does not cost any CP.
Use perks. The unit may activate any perks they have equipped. For example, the unit may use Regenerate and Terrify. This costs 1 CP. Passive perks and those with specific methods of use do not need to use this action to activate. Please refer to each perk for activation methods.
Prepare. This action resets any movement or usage of weapons. For example, if the unit made a move and wanted to use a heavy weapon, it could use Prepare and then be able to use the heavy weapon. Likewise, if a heavy weapon has been used and the unit wanted to move, it could use Prepare and then it would be free to move. This action costs 1 CP.
Guard. Each time the unit uses this action, it increases the unit's defense by +1. This defense benefit lasts until the unit performs a different action or until the end of the game turn. This action costs 1 CP.
Support. This action is only available to units who have not made any actions in the current game turn. When used, the player gains +1 CP, but the unit cannot make any other actions this game turn. To clarify, the unit will still be able to roll saves and benefit from passive perk effects and the like.
Most of the actions here cost 1 CP. However, this can increase over the course of a game turn. If the same unit uses the same action, it will double in cost. For example, a unit that used Move 3 times over the course of a game turn would cost 7 CP. First time was 1 CP, second time was 2 CP, third time was 4 CP, which adds up to 7 CP. This double cost factor will reset at the start of the next game turn, so the unit would only cost 1 CP to move on the next game turn.
Counter actions. When a unit is attacked, it will have access to one of 3 counter actions. The player may choose not to use a counter action if they wish, but must decide after the opposing player has finished rolling attack dice, but before rolling saves. These all cost CP to perform and will count towards the double cost of an action.
Counterattack. This uses the attack action. The unit immediately attacks the unit that is attacking them, resolved just like the attack phase in a standard game. The casualties of both this unit and the unit attacking them is applied as soon as they both finish using their weapons. This costs the same CP as it would to use the attack action.
Counter guard. This uses the guard action. The unit increases its defense by +1 and then compares to the attack dice that were rolled. This costs the same CP as it would to use the guard action.
Counter perk. This uses the use perk action. The unit may use any perks that are not passive or have a specific method of use. These perks must be directed at either the attacking unit or at themselves. This costs the same CP as it would to use the use perk action.
End of game turn. After players have used up their CP or do not want to make any more actions, it is the end of the game turn. Any leftover CP that a player did not use is kept and added to their total for the next game turn. After this, the next game turn begins, and players will again roll to see who picks the turn master and determine their CP. Note that units who have become casualties will not be able to generate CP for a player.
Deciding the victor. After 4 or more game turns have passed, it is the end of the game. As the game is a death match, the player with the most points of their roster remaining is the winner.
In this example, the roster has 65% of its strength remaining, and the other roster has 54%, so the 65% is the victor.
Advanced games are another way to test your strategic mettle and allow many detailed and intricate tactics. We hope that this playstyle, along with standard games, enriches your wargaming experience.
See you on the battlefield!